Dude, always fun to jam with you, man. We have to start with so you decided to launch a new business, like we were talking about.
I wanted to torture myself, Jason.
Another business. So it's not your first business, fortunately. So things have been going really awesome. Like the product is really cool. I think that what would be really good to give everyone listening to this is AI is obviously really hot right now. There are budgets that sales teams have that they have to spend on AI. So there's a lot of noise. In other words, why did you decide to, start another AI, company? Why does the sales world need another AI tool?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they don't. Ask me in a year and we'll find out. Well, I mean, a lot of reasons. One of the things that always has frustrated me is so many of these sales tools historically in general, but also with the AI stuff, are built by people who frankly haven't sold that much.
Or at all.
Right. Yeah. How many are just full on developers? And you can learn a lot from user research. Don't get me wrong, but gosh, if you haven't been in the trenches and truly know what it's like being on the roller coaster of having a quota, it's really hard to build a product with that person in mind. And then AI is a great example of this. AI doesn't really quite know the difference between a really good sales process or a really good tactic versus one that isn't very good. It's been trained on a large corpus of data. It hasn't been specifically trained on just your company's selling motion, right? And that's what the big move you're seeing AI trying to do now is provide a lot more point solutions. Point of view is so important. And that's missing in a lot of AI tools. You can load up any call recording software and you can ask questions against the transcript and it takes that question, looks at the transcript. The LLM is the regular LLM that someone is using to do therapy when they're at their house and they're trying to construct answers to questions. There's no real point of view. So when I looked at this, I was saying, all right, well, as someone who's I've built 87 sales teams. I've coached hundreds of founders, worked with thousands of reps. I have a lot of experience in the trenches myself. I think, well, I would like to help sales reps do everything in between the calls. Because AI can already do that today. We can absolutely take all of these tasks that sales reps have to do between one sales call to another, and we can have AI do a lot of that. But then the byproduct of that is having more visibility into the behaviors that result in more sales, which creates this great feedback loop for the rep to self-coach as well as for the executive teams to be able to better understand their sales process. So it works really well. And since I have a point of view and I can build AI and an AI tool that has my own point of view built into it, well, then I think we build something that's actually pretty special.
Yeah. So you're quite the AI wizard, man. For someone that's you're not like an engineer by trade, but you can do so many technical things that you're showing me and Marcus Chan on one of our mastermind calls. I was like, holy shit, dude. The amount of stuff you had going on with the professional services part of the business that you ran, and how much of that was just very intelligently leveraging AI to help your clients was wild. Can you share what were some of the stuff that you guys were running up against with your clients or things that they weren't able to do because you started using this tool with prior to I guess officially making the launch. What were some of the things that you were seeing?
Well, so look, a big thing is just understanding what is actually happening in a sales process. So a lot of the work with with my former consulting company, a lot of our work was around sales process design, making sure you're hiring the right people. What's the playbooks look like? All of that. We're kind of building out sales orgs, and we're doing big sales org transformations. And one of the things that was always frustrating is you would have sales reps. You would work with sales reps from a coaching lens. You'd give them kind of a process that they should follow, but you don't really know if they're following the process. And then you go and listen to one of their sales calls and cringe because you're like, this is not really exactly what I wanted them to do or even close to it. And you also had your top performers where it's like, hey, we can't touch these beautiful little gems because if we do, it derails the only person who's actually successful here. So you get in this weird spot where you're like, hey, we want to systematize what works, but we don't quite know what works. And we go and talk to the one sales rep who's having success, and they're like not really sure either. They just kind of think it's this one thing and they don't actually know. And you go and listen to their calls that are different every single time. So it's always really frustrating. We can roll out a process, but it doesn't mean that that process is going to be effective for everybody, or it's built on, something that's durable. And because of that, when you're building a team from scratch, we could typically do a lot better things versus if you're transforming an org or you're rebuilding a team that already exists. You have to be a lot more careful on how you roll those things out. So I wanted to better understand what is happening on all of the sales calls. How do all of those things fit together to create a clear picture of what's going on with this specific deal? And what can I learn from all of that? So that way we can systematize what works because we know what works. And then we can stop doing what doesn't work because we know it doesn't work. And that kind of visibility allows you to actually get something that's durable.
Because there's a lot of tools out there, because anyone listening to this or watching this is going to think, hey, there's a lot of tools that record sales calls and are supposed to be giving me some of this intelligence. Hence the conversational intelligence tool. I mean, I feel like every tool's got a call recorder these days.
Yeah.
What aren't these tools extracting? What aren't they telling us?
There's a methodology that's really important to understand behind the scenes. So I'm going to get a little AI nerdy here. Actually, before I even do that, I'll just say, you've used a lot of different tools like this. It's rare that I come across a company that are using these tools and it's actually all of that useful, right? The number of people who use some of these tools, there's a ton of people who use, I don't want to name specific tools out. That's where I'm hesitating here, but a lot of these tools get used and then you go and see how they're using it and they're either not using it to its full ability or they're not on the plan that gives them access to this thing. Or there's a level of they need to know what good looks like and they need to build this out in a certain way to where things are being tracked appropriately that they just never set up. So they end up becoming a way to monitor sales calls and then listen to calls and give feedback and that sort of thing, which is absolutely valuable. So what they're not giving, it's a hard question to answer because it depends on how the person is using it. But I'll tell you what we do to try to mitigate some of that to make sure that everybody at a baseline gets usable information that they can do. So AI, there's something called context window. And what a context window is, for those of you who don't know, it's how many words you can have in a chat thread before the AI starts forgetting what you're talking about. The most obvious example of this is if you're talking to ChatGPT, you might notice it starts forgetting things that happened earlier in the conversation. And there's a whole bunch of things they do to try to mitigate this challenge. Okay. A sales call transcript is actually pretty long. It's between 30 and 60,000 tokens. I'm going to use the term words, but know that that's a token count, which is what AI turns words into to be able to do the math that they need to do in order to predict what needs to come out. Okay, 30 to 60,000 token is a good amount. If you copy and paste that into a context window, what ends up happening is you're asking the LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, to figure out how to prioritize all of that context in the way that it needs to in order to answer the question that you have about that context. Because that's a challenge, what there's a lot of pressure on is what's called prompt engineering. Everyone knows about this. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was all the rage. You had to be this incredible prompt engineer. It's becoming less and less important because the foundation models are getting better at understanding what you actually want. But even today, the better instructions you give the LLM on how to use the context that you're giving it in order to answer the question that you want them to answer, the better your outputs will be. And because of that, the pressure is now on me, the rep, to be able to ask questions in a way to where I know I'm surfacing the right parts of the context that I'm given. In this example, one entire transcript. So because of that, what a lot of these tools do is they let you query transcripts. And sometimes you're only querying one because you're looking at a specific sales call. Other times you're looking at a company view and you're querying across 3 different transcripts. That's a lot of context that needs to get managed through. So what we did, and this is all totally nerdy behind the scenes stuff, is we have a series of agents that process transcripts individually with really strict rules on what information we need to pull out of that transcript. And in some cases, we're even calculating how we have like 10 metrics that we look at. We calculate how effective the reps were on those metrics, and we have a lot of rules on how we leverage that context. But we extract through, I believe it's 12, might be 14, but all of these different agents extract little bits of context out of the entire transcript and then store that as structured data. Now, do you want to see all that? Probably not. Like, we display a lot of it, but that's really not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is now when you're querying the LLM, you're not asking it to go search through and do all of this searching across all of the different transcripts. We've already pulled it all out for you. And then if there's a gap, our agents know, oh, there's a gap here. Let me go grab the actual transcript and then look for the missing gap. So you've completely changed the way that agents are leveraging the context because they have it in a different format and also have access to the original source material. This is called context engineering. So then that way you can get a lot better answers based on more simpler queries, which is what users give. They don't give huge giant prompts when they're trying to figure out, hey, what is the biggest risk to this deal closing? They just ask, what's the biggest risk to this deal closing? So that's like, not to get too nerdy and weird, but that's what happens on the back end to try to mitigate some of that issue.
Got it. So my understanding then is that a lot of the conversational intelligence tools that are giving you some of this information, they're like, if I look at our call recording tool, I won't mention the name, but if I look at like my chat back and forth with like how I interact with it, I can do it a call at a time. And it's not remembering anything from another call or thing that I asked for. It doesn't remember anything about what I do, like none of that kind of stuff. We're using Perplexity now as like a company. So like we're able to like kind of access a bunch of LLMs and like, that's really badass too. And we can train it to a degree, but it's not, to your point, it's not like, it's a lot of fucking work, man.
Yeah.
The prompts, like to prompt it and train it and to do all this stuff. And like every time I want to do like a very simple task that I do, well, I don't know how simple this is, but I feel like it should be simple, is we've started using these one-page business cases. And the business case is written in the form of a memo, an internal memo that the champion. So let's say I'm selling to you, Kyle.
Yeah.
I would put together a business case based on the transcripts of the previous calls, and it's written in your voice. And then we just workshop it together. It's supposed to look like it's written by you versus a third-party vendor. And it works really, really well. But getting to that point is like, I got to find the PDF example to attach to it and say, hey, use this as an example. I got to go dig those transcripts up again. And then there's a special prompt that I use. That's a lot of steps, dude. And what I find in training folks, because this is, we'll train a lot of folks on ChatGPT and how to use it for account research and do all this other kind of stuff. It's a lot of steps for, I would say, if I had to guess, 3/4 of the reps. There are people, Kyle, that don't even know how to like move tabs in their Google Chrome browser. It's wild. So when there's this level of complexity where you have to do all of this stuff as a rep versus you just saying, I want this, or it's surfacing the information for you. Am I kind of tracking properly with like really 100%. Like the value of your tool? Yes. It's like, so let's talk then about what are the metrics that it's surfacing and how did you land on those being the things? Because that sounds like it's the special sauce. It's not a patience score. Yeah, or talk time, it's not stuff like that. It's like, it's really tangible things that behaviors that how did you come to the conclusion that those are the right behaviors? And like, what kind of correlation are you seeing with those? Cause that to me, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of part of the special sauce.
It is. And this is, it's in flight. Like I think I made some really strong decisions early on. I could see it adapting as well. But fortunately, I think the core 10 that I have right now are really critical ones. It helps to have a point of view, right? Like that's what I was talking about earlier, and I have one. So the 10 metrics that we look at, and 4 of them are kind of annoying because it's based on a methodology and people always want to change to the methodology they use, but there's a reason why I picked these 4, but I'll go through the 10 real quick. So the first 5, because I group it into 2, the first 5 is BANT N as in Nancy at the end. And so budget authority, need, timeline, and next steps are the first 5. Now, BANT is an interesting one because not everybody uses it as a methodology. The reason why I picked it, I thought a ton about this, is because if you look at every other methodology, MEDDIC, MEDDPICC, Treehouse, I don't know, I'm just making one up. We have all these like crazy acronyms. If you look, all those are a little bit more complex versions of BANT. They're a little bit more specific to match a narrow use case. And I wanted to go as fundamental as possible for a couple of reasons. But one of the main reasons is the more principle oriented you are when you're training AI models, this is my experience. Okay. The more principle oriented you are versus like example oriented, if you're doing a lot of judgment based tasks, having principles typically leads to better outcomes than if you're doing more analytical based tasks where pattern matching is important. So an example of this is if you want AI to write like you typically give it a lot of examples of your writing. That's for version 1. Copy my writing style. Here's my writing style. Version 2 is you give examples of a query and it being rewritten in your writing style because that query is going to be similar types of queries you give it, so we can start pattern matching. If you were to strip all that away and just give it principles behind your writing, sometimes you get even better writing because it's not pattern matching to specific examples, because how you write is a judgment. The LLM is making a judgment. Is this going to fit the writing style based on what I know it is? So I'm going a little complicated there for a reason. Like I want to be clear that there's a lot of ways to do these things, and there's judgment-based tasks and there's analytical-based tasks, and certain things are better for certain ones. So I want to go as foundational, as principle-oriented as I can, and still leave room for the nuance for specific selling motion. So that's why the BANT is in there, is because they're pretty foundational: budget, authority, need, and timing. Right. Next steps. We all know if you set strong next steps, it's a good signal that you are progressing this deal forward. So those are the first 5. The second 5, and these were the hard ones, are more principles or skills that the reps will be doing on calls. So we have concern surfacing, value articulation, discovery depth. We have, I did them in the wrong order, so now my brain is melting. Pain quantification is the other one. And then we have value articulation. So those are the other 5 that we had that are under the skills umbrella.
I think you said value articulation twice. It was concern surfacing, value articulation, discovery depths, pain quantification.
I said value articulation twice. You're right. Which one am I missing here? I'll just pull it up. Why am I making myself suffer? Call control. That's right. Actually controlling the call. That's what I missed. Okay. So those are the 5. And the reason I picked those ones was for a similar reason why I picked the BANT, is because they sit in more of a principle place, right? And what we're doing with all 10 of these is every single transcript, we're looking at and scoring how well the rep qualified BANT. So not how qualified it is. That's definitely a component of the rubric we use, but also how well the rep did it, including things like budget's a weird one, where it's like, is the budget qualification low, or did the rep not build enough value to justify the budget? You need to be able to support that, right? Some sales, they just have to have budget set aside because it's a larger company. That's how they do things. Other sales, like you need to really justify the budget. So you have to be able to support those things. And then same with what's happening on the sales skills side. We have a strict rubrics that's scored on a 1 to 4 scale on how well the rep executed those things. The reason this is important and why it's worth bringing up is because, and everyone can do this their own, by the way, all of our, like I have prompts and stuff that they can use to find these scores out. Like this is something that I give people. The reason why we do this is because we start to quantify the rep's performance on a call. And how you normally did that was every sales rep or sales manager would listen to a call, right? They would do a little scorecard, and that helps them quantify it. It does it at scale, obviously. There's tools that let you build in your own scorecards. It requires you to have a really strong rubric to make sure that those are scored effectively. We've just built all of that in, and it serves as the foundation. So that's why I picked them, is because they feel more fundamental. Doesn't mean I won't add or let users add stuff later on, but today that's how I'm doing it.
Got it. So again, I think a big part of this is it sounds really nice to be able to just customize the shit out of everything. But if I'm thinking I'm an early stage startup and I'm building out my sales team, and maybe we don't have like a formal type of scorecard because we don't have enough data yet, I have these like best practices that I can inject right into my sales work. Yeah, like they should be following these. Yeah.
Yeah. They should be following it. And also, like, how durable is your rubric for scoring the scorecard items that you chose? Like, a lot of times, unless you have a really strong enablement team, which at certain size companies they definitely do, gosh, those rubrics need a lot of work. You know, there's a subjective element to a sales call that makes it really difficult to score. And I know this from experience. Like, a lot of work that I did just trying to tune the way that we score these things. It's like, so annoying. Sometimes the LLM thinks one thing when that's just not the case.
Yeah. I mean, dude, not to mention just you being able to listen to a call yourself and score the subjective parts is hard enough. You know, did it score a 1, 2, or a 3, or a 4 or 5, or however you're doing it? So what are some of the patterns, and feel free to share. I think you had a case study and some stuff in there that you had saw as well, but what are some of the patterns that you're seeing across this data? And I think maybe before that, like how are companies using this data? Like what are they able to do with this data when it scores them in these particular areas?
It serves two people. From an executive perspective, it's nice to have these things scored and you understand how predictive each of these things are to a deal actually closing. That's like base level for an executive. It's nice to know those things, and you can do better coaching and things like that. We are also taking these 10 metrics, looking at how predictive they are, how strongly correlated with statistical significance of a deal being closed. And based on that, we create a weighted average that's specific to that one company. We create a weighted average of those, of that metric. And we give what's called a thread index, where we can show like, you know, a grade on how well this deal is progressing. But that's like a cool little feature we have. The real power, though, is you can then look at the probability of this deal closing. And you can say, hey, baseline for deals in deal stage 2, it's 20% likelihood to close. But because of the math, we know that this deal specifically has a higher likelihood because all of these signals point to it's more likely to close, and you can adjust the rate because of that. So that's how it helps the executive. The other side is the sales reps themselves. So I don't know if a sales rep really cares about my little 10 metrics. You know, they're like, who cares about this guy? But what's nice is when you're interacting with AI, you're not copying and pasting transcripts into ChatGPT or whatever. You're on a deal level. You're talking to an AI agent who knows all the things that happened across the entire deal and knows the scores that you have per call and then on a deal level, and can give you feedback, advice on what to do next, can write materials for you, can do anything you need to do based on full context of the deal, not just the recent call. And that's really helpful for reps because then they can just do their work right there. They can prep for the next call. They can do self-coaching stuff. And they just have access to something that actually knows the context of the entire deal, which just doesn't quite exist today. I mean, there's tools that say they do, and I've tried a lot of these things, and it just doesn't work the way you would want it to work. So I built it. And look, will these people build it out? Probably. Maybe. But I did too. So
yeah. Well, I think that like the advantage that you have in this is that the firsthand experience that you have.
Sure.
And also that you're scrappy at this point, at least, where you can move really, really quickly on this stuff. So what are some interesting things that you're seeing with your customers?
Oh, yes, that's right. So like I was saying, I kind of slipped this in for a second. Every company is totally different. And that's the wild part. Like we have some customers that like budget is super critical for them. And we have others where it's literally not representative of anything. It's like hilarious that it just doesn't matter. So each company is very different. I did bring one case study. I was looking at it for fun. So one of the things that we do is we identify every objection that came up on the call. We score that objection based on how well the rep resolved the objection on a 1 to 4 scale. And we also say, did the rep come across prepared or unprepared for that objection? So we have a sense of how prepared the rep was. We also have an understanding of how effective they were at resolving the objection on the call.
Do you have an example just so people can hear too? Like, how does it score? Like, how did you train the model to like score them in those areas?
So based on rubrics. So I've built rubrics that kind of clearly outline what each score looks like.
Yeah. So what's an example of like the preparedness? Would it be like, oh, the rep uses a bunch of filler words right away or stumbles over what they're saying? Is there anything like that? Because I think it'd be good for people to hear.
Yeah. Pull it up.
Some of the rubrics behind stuff.
Yeah, I'll pull up. Where's my objections? Oh, so here's another fun fact for AI nerds. I did multiple variations of each prompt, and we have a simple variation and a complex variation. So I'll build out these super complicated prompts that are like 20 pages long.
Holy shit.
And they would work really well for certain activities. And then I would, that was kind of a habit of mine. Like I would build these really complex prompts. And they worked great for a long time, especially early on. Like if you go a year ago, like these things were killer. But models have gotten a lot better. And so I started doing testing of complex versus simple for a bunch of different prompts that we use. And simple, which strips out so much of the complexity, started outperforming the complicated ones. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where when you're doing judgment, if you give the LLM too much to pattern match on, they over index on that pattern. And that pattern might be representative or it might represent something that you definitely need to be aware of. But if it's too hard of a pattern, then it just catches things that aren't quite right. So anyway, let's go. The one I pulled up here is my old complicated one. So we have a simpler version of this, but since this pulled up first, I will grab this one. Rep preparedness. So one of them is the one you mentioned. How much hesitation, filler words, like how do they come across in the beginning of the response? The second one for preparedness is how structured their response was. It seemed like there was some structure, like they had gotten that one before. Did they work in proof points, referencing specific customers or anything to help overcome that? And then how smooth was the transition? And then confidence level, which is it's a different version of the unconfident. It's was it deliberate, confident language, that kind of thing. And then the inverse would be how you would do it for the other one.
Yeah.
And then just for fun here, this is a 14-page prompt. It is a complicated one. And let me see. Oh, I have the simple one here too. 4 pages. And the simple one is the one we're using in production because it actually works better. Objections are hard. They're hard to
I bet.
They're hard for AI to pull out.
But again, I think this is like sort of your secret sauce in the sense that, like, did they use a customer story or a proof point? Like, it's got the best practices built into like all of the things that we know we should be doing, you know? So back to what you were saying though, what are some of the things some of the interesting patterns you're seeing with your customers in terms of like correlation with win rates and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So here's, and this is a good example of like having foundational metrics there. So I took a look at, before I came on here, I took a look at a customer of ours and the objection. So like I said, we're scoring all of the objections. We're looking at preparedness, all of that thing. And we're also looking at the average objection for closed lost deals versus closed won deals. And you will know the answer to this question, but I want everyone to just think for a second. If they had to guess, which one has more objections, closed won or closed lost deals? Now, while you're locking in your guess, I'll tell you what a lot of people would say. They're like, oh, well, I would imagine closed won deals had less objections because they're like, oh, this looks great. Like, let's move forward. Not actually correct. And people who have a lot of experience in sales probably know this already. It's actually the ones where you get more objections that it could be a way better fit because they actually care about this thing. And they're asking questions that are really relevant to them implementing it into their world or their business. And for them, this was exactly the case. It's not always the case. We have customers that this isn't the case for, but for them, their close won deals had a higher average objection than their close loss deals. And guess what? Concern surfacing, which is the rep's ability to surface those concerns, the higher performing rep had higher concern surfacing, and as a result, had more average objections per close one deal and per deal in general than the lower performing rep. So what that tells you is that in this specific scenario, the rep who's better at concern surfacing, who gets more objections, he also had a high preparedness score, that rep is performing better because of this fundamental part of a process that can now be replicated to the other rep whose average objections per deal is a lot lower. Their concern surfacing score is lower. Now you can roll that out, and that's part of the best practice. Like, hey, for us, we need to pull out objections from people. If we don't, they result in unresolved objections, which means it kills our deal. It's not the case for everybody, but in this case it was. You would never know that unless you literally had a manager listen to every single call. So the way those things work together, I think, is really powerful. And as someone who's really data driven, it's like gold for me, because I hate you go meet with a sales rep. You're like, oh, I'm going to give you some coaching here. I think you should have done this differently, done that differently. How many sales reps roll their eyes like, okay, well, what about the last call when this came up? Like that the manager doesn't know about that, or they don't listen to all my calls. I just kind of said something weird in this one. I have the data now. There's no more of my opinion. It's like, hey, we know that these things matter. So let's talk about what actually matters for you. And I also know this other sales reps are very good in this area, and I can get them involved in the coaching. This is what you build enablement teams to do, is to be able to bridge all of these gaps together and then watch how it improves over time. Since it's being scored, I can look week over week, month over month. What's the trend of improvement of this specific metric that we know is valuable to us? Like, this is the world we're going to. And I get really excited about the AI thing in general, because we are moving to a place where I have a strong opinion that this will be true. We are moving to a place where a $1 billion company will be able to manage the entire sales with one person, because AI is so well leveraged by that organization. Now, will you want to do that? Maybe not, right? If that person gets sick, then your whole sales org is gone. But my point is, we are going to get to a place, I'm very confident about this, where every seller is so enabled that they're able to manage 10x, 20x the amount of deals that they were able to manage before, because everything that happens between the calls is being done for them. And that's the world I'm most excited about.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I think one thing to point out also, I think that sounds like as part of the secret sauce, is it's pattern detection. It's like a lot of these tools are retroactively telling you what you did, but it's not going and pulling a large sample set of data and saying, here are all of the things that we see correlating with like deals that we win versus deals that we lose. Right. And to your point earlier, that's unique for every company, especially when you start to think about SMB versus mid-market versus enterprise, when you start to think about all the different industries, services versus software versus products. I mean, there's just so many different things where we kind of apply the same best practices that really shouldn't be applied across such a broad sample set. So interesting. So you think the future of AI, you're envisioning a world where there are a company that needs 1,000 reps right now to hit their number would need maybe 100 to hit their number.
And by the way, I think 100 would be a lot. I think we're moving towards a world where, depending on how long those calls are, everything other than the human-to-human conversation gets handled by AI.
So that's like, walk me through what that is. So everything outside of the sales call, that's the prep leading up to the call, that's the follow-up emails that get sent out afterwards, that's creating the contracts, all that kind of shit?
Exactly. If you were to hire, well, actually, let me put it this way. If you could do this, what I'm about to tell you, you would. If you could hire a team per deal, wouldn't you just do that? You'd have one person responsible for making sure all potential, all customer or prospect communication is drafted well aligned with what's been happening with that deal specifically? Wouldn't you hire somebody just to manage stakeholders? Wouldn't you hire somebody to create any assets that you need in order to help with the sale? Wouldn't you hire somebody just to do the calls? That's the sales rep today. Wouldn't you hire somebody just to coach the sales rep on how to best improve their chances of winning this deal, either based on a previous interaction or an upcoming interaction? Like, you would just hire that full team and you just put them on one deal. You can't. That's why you don't. But you would. You would just make them all individual roles. AI allows you to do that. That's what's so incredible about what's being built right now. Like, so much of the way we interact with AI is I have one conversation with ChatGPT. ChatGPT gives me that response. And as you use more agentic tools, you'll notice that there's multiple AI agents that are involved. And there's one agent that's responsible for coordinating between all of those, an orchestrator. Gosh, well, you can build out that entire team with AI today, and you can give that to a rep on every single deal. So every single thing a rep does other than talking to the human is going to be done by AI. And you take a sales org that has 1,000 sellers. I would be shocked if they couldn't manage that same volume with 50. Probably
wild,
less.
Dude.
Yeah.
So, because at first what I'm thinking is like, the Salesforce stat that has been around for a really long time, that reps only spend about 25% of their time on, revenue generating activities. So let's say the average rep spends 10 hours a week in front of a customer or potential customer. What I've always thought about is like, if you removed the other 30 hours, would they really replace that with 30 more hours of customer facing time? Like, is a human capable of doing 8 hours of calls back to back to back? Like, that's one thing. And then the other thing is the efficiency gain. Like, if you could 10x the output of a rep, there's a math equation there somewhere of I either have to be able to spend 10 times more time in front of a customer and or also just improve my effectiveness,
right?
My win rate in this case, right? How do you think that we get there? I guess I
actually want to touch on something. You brought up something really, really good, which is, can you do 8 hours of calls in a day, right? Like, is a person really capable of that?
I think there are some people that are capable of that, by the way.
Absolutely could. If I don't do anything else, and I'm literally like, when the call ends, it's just on to the next call, I absolutely could. But take that 8 hours. Like, maybe it's not, maybe it's 5 for most people. So take that out of the equation for a second. We both know that the more reps a seller has doing sales calls, the better they become at them. So actually having more density is useful because you get a lot better at that task. An SDR who connects to 5 people every 100 calls typically takes a lot longer to improve their skills than one who's talking to 30 every 100 calls, right? You just have more reps, you improve your skills more. So having that density, I think, is actually very useful. And sure, maybe not every seller can do 5 hours of calls every single day, 6 hours of calls every single day. You're just going to hire the ones who can. And that's really, like, selling is going to look very different.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you just did some napkin math and you said, let's use that 1,000 reps. If you said, hey, let's double their win rate. So now we only need to have 500 people to close the same amount of business. And let's say that we triple their output. We're able to help them spend 30 hours a week on calls. It's like 125 or whatever that number is. I don't know. What's 500 divided by 3? 166.
There you go.
So it's like, yeah, holy shit. Being able to do the same thing with 160, 170 reps versus 1,000, it's like, that doesn't feel unrealistic to me. I think so let's talk about that. Like, where do you think the future is with this in terms of like how the org is set up? So let's also include like, hey, are we going to continue seeing like, SDR, AE, account manager? Are we going to combine those into a role? Like, where do you see some of these efficiencies happening and like the structure, and like how quickly do you think this is going to happen?
Yeah, so a lot here. I'm going to table for for now. We'll talk about this after. I'm going to table the SDR role for a second, because so much of it will be replaced, but still the calling part, like literally cold calling folks, I think is going to be around a pretty long time.
I think so too.
You can't use AI to do cold outbound. It's not legal. It's robocalling. So I think just policy probably prevents that from progressing all that much. Anyway, I think it's a pretty deep conversation. So I'm going to table that for now. Let's just talk about the sales org, because I've thought a lot about this. Managers. Right now, the best practice is managers cap out at around 9, right? And you want less than 9 people per manager. That's generally the best practice. My view is that's going to go to 30, 40, 50 reps. I think it's going to dramatically increase, probably 30, but I could see it going even higher. I don't think that manager's role is doing anything ops related. So I want to talk about revenue operations. If I was in revenue ops, I'd be cowering in my boots right now.
Oh, yeah.
Operations as a role was created because of a problem the application layer caused. If CRMs weren't so terrible, I shouldn't say that, but if CRMs didn't cause the need to better understand this data and surface this data, then we wouldn't have revenue operations. But they do, so we do, right? That role exists to solve a problem the application layer solved. That's gone. And that will be gone very, very quickly. They'll always be lingering, right? Like you have the normal adoption curve, but we're moving through that curve really, really quickly. I'd be shocked. I'd be genuinely shocked if there were revenue operation roles in 5 years. I'd be genuinely shocked. I think that role is completely toast in 2.
I think that if I could have my thoughts on that real quick, I think there's definitely room for a senior person to like make sense of the data in a way that AI cannot.
What would that sense be?
I don't think that AI is ever going to know a business better than the people that operate it in a daily basis will know it. So like your instincts around like what it's telling you to do and around like more macro decisions that you should make in the business, I think it's going to spoon feed you the data that you need and give some recommendations. But I still think that person that has a couple decades of sales experience being able to talk with someone that can really make them understand what's in the data. Like I still see a big need for that. There's probably not going to be people pulling spreadsheets and doing all of the other kind of fucking pivot tables and stuff like that.
Yeah. I just wouldn't consider that person really an ops role. The thing you're touching on that actually is genuinely really important is the expertise is absolutely helpful. I think, and I will say this, like, I think there's a world where the people working day to day in a company are actually AI, and that institutional knowledge that lives with the company. Every role at first is going to become, I orchestrate AI agents that do the job that I used to have to do myself. That absolutely will happen. The expertise is helpful, but I actually think a lot of the institutional knowledge of a company is going to stay in this AI context layer. Which means it'll outlive the human employees that come and go, which will be useful. And going back to your point, like, yes, that expertise is really helpful, and to make good judgment, really helpful, because that comes from real expertise. We're a while away from that. I just don't think that person sits in a revenue operations role. That's probably the person running the entire sales org. So anyway, we'll see how all that shapes up, but I just don't think revenue operations is going to be around forever. I view the management role being more of a trainer role, more of a coach. I still think sales reps are going to be coached by humans. I don't know. I think there's a lot of self-coaching that'll happen, and that's useful, right? Because you can be a little bit more blunt with your AI than you can be with your manager. There's less baggage, but I do also think that another human there holding you accountable, coaching you, is absolutely going to stay around. So I would imagine that manager role, instead of 9 people, probably goes to 30. That manager's more of a sales coach than anything else.
How do you see a manager coaching 30 people at a time? Like providing individual one-on-one attention to 30 people.
I think you need less individual one-on-one attention.
So you're operating in a world where basically let's cut the sales org down by 60, 70, 80% and only have the people in there that don't really require a lot of micromanagement that are also extremely skilled.
I could definitely be off my rocker here, but we're seeing early stage companies already operating this operating this way from the beginning. How much one-on-one, if so much of your sales process are built in or systems.
Yeah.
That AI is completely managing. Like I'm not listening to a full transcript with the rep. AI is surfacing specific parts of the last 10 calls that they did, and we're reviewing that. I'm grouping things together by what skill they need to work on. Like it's radically going to change the way that we operate anything. And even right now, like the amount of stuff, starting a business again, I started a handful. I have never felt more powerful than I do today. Holy crap, dude. The amount of stuff I can get done. Like my website right now is beautiful. I built that myself. I will never hire a web designer again for the rest of my life. I can literally just make it while watching TV, asking Codex. If I'm shipping a new feature, I don't ask my developer. I have our code base on my laptop. I build the feature myself as if I'm a developer. I have no idea what I'm doing. I build the feature. I submit a PR. I don't even know if that's the right way of saying that, but that's what I think I'm doing. I submit a PR. My developer looks at it, makes tweaks he needs to do to make sure it fits in and I'm not breaking the whole solution. And that feature is live. We pushed 3 integrations yesterday with completely different tools. Each one took like an hour to build. Like we are in such a different world today. That's trickling down to the sales department. So I just think every single seller is going to be able to do so much more, and they're going to need less hand holding. And that's honestly the dream. Like you just want to hire absolutely next level, crazy, talented salespeople, give them the resources to manage as many deals as possible. And they make so much money that they're never going to consider leaving. That's the game. That's what the game is going to be in the future. And if you're a seller extraordinarily talented, you're going to be the most valuable hire at the company.
Yeah. I'm so skeptical of this, but I love the radical take, dude. Cause I'm like, dude, even like the most qualified, like senior leaders that I've experienced, I'm like, you put 100 of them in a room and you're going to get law of averages.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
You know, and it's like, I just wonder what that's going to look like. But, dude, this is great, man.
Real quick. What do you think? You think it's going to be a lot before that kind of transition?
I don't think we're ever going to get to a place where a manager can work with 20, 30 people at a time and give them the I'm just thinking around like the amount of mental capacity that you would need to know 20, 30 people and to manage them properly. Just knowing what they care about and providing the support that they need, I think would be overwhelming. The other thing I think with this is like, I just don't see a world. I think we'll get more qualified people in, but I just look at all of the companies. Even if you chopped away 2/3 of the reps on the team, there are still people that like, fuck, I have 3 coaches, dude. I have a CEO coach, a marketing coach. I have a third coach I can't think of right now. A sales coach. You know, like I like having accountability for stuff. You know what I mean? And I think it's like, it's very hard to have accountability. I think when there's a certain group size that just feels like I can't really know these individuals that well. 30 people. I can't really know that well from a management standpoint.
You might not even need them. I think you have, I say the one manager, 30 reps. I feel like a sales team with 30 reps will sound insane to us in 5-10 years.
Really?
It'll sound genuinely crazy.
And I also wonder what that looks like on the strat and enterprise side of things too. I wonder what that looks like for, we want to close, 7-figure deals, type of thing.
That actually, maybe we can end with this. I don't want to go over, but that actually is a really important point that I think everyone should have in their head. I do very much believe that selling is a human thing. I don't see a world where you have AI agents just doing demos for folks and managing the entire sale and that relationship with the buyer. But I do see a world where companies that can't afford to hire salespeople because the cost of their software is too low, they can use AI to do personalized demo, like ClickUp, for example. It's $15 a month. They can't hire B2B salespeople to service that segment. So what you do is you have AI do custom demos and help manage that. And that I can see an application of it. The thing is, though, what happens when you just collapse the price of all of the software? We're about to go into a crazy time, and I'm just absolutely fired up to be in the arena. And that's why I built the tool in the first place. Like, I just want to be in the arena while all this happens. And, maybe
hell yeah, dude,
back and we'll laugh, and maybe the other day none of us will have jobs, and hopefully we still laugh.
Dude, this is fun, man. Before you take off, where can people go to connect with you, find more about the company that you just started, all that kind of stuff?
SalesThread.ai is the company website. Kyle Van Voorhis anywhere is where you find me. Luckily, I'm the only one that's Kyle with a last name of Van Voorhis, so I'm not hard to find.